This time we shall begin the question and answer time. At first, my question is negative effects in the development drone, as well as first topic. I think it will occur a lot of accidents of collision with drones in the air and a sudden drop from the air to the earth, as you talked in your presentation. How do you think about those concerns of many people, and how can prevent these accidents in the future?
Those are some valid concerns. The thing about gravity is it always works. You know, if you let something go in midair, it will always come down. So defying gravity by itself is almost like a miracle, if you think about it. So we have done a lot in the last 100+ years to defy gravity, and we've actually not only defined gravity, but we've gone and left gravity behind. We made our ways to space, and we landed on the moon. So we've done quite a lot in only 100 years. Now, if you look at the drone industry, the consumer commercial drone industry is very young. And there's already millions of hours of flight time out there, and yet we have not a single recorded death due to a consumer or commercial drone. So that by itself speaks volumes. The technology and the software aspects continue to improve. Sensors are being added to these platforms that not only detect the environment, but start to interact with what's going on around them or other objects. And so the technology itself becomes safer and safer. Studies have been done already on what is the impact if a drone does fall out of the sky and potentially hit someone. And so we have a lot of data that is helpful. Now, the goal, of course, is that we don't fly drones in ways that could harm anyone. We don't want drones to fall out of the sky. We don't want drones to collide with airplanes. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes, from education to the invention of better technologies to ways of managing everything and airspace, to geofencing, so drones cannot fly into certain areas. Looking at all these advancements, this is very safe technology, and the benefit absolutely outweighs that mitigated risk that is there, and that becomes smaller and smaller as our technology and as our understanding grows.
Thank you for your good answers. You talked the importance of sensors, but I think the most important thing of developing drone industry is acquiring a energy source. For example, a battery for a drone to operate for a long time. Then I know, do you think about the possibility of the development of energy source, and how do you think you will overcome the obstacle of energy problem soon?
That's another very good point. Right now, the limitation of these consumer and commercial drones really is the power source. We're using lithium-ion batteries that have a limited amount of storage capabilities. So you have anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes flight time, and that limits in what you can really do with the technology today. We're seeing great ideas out there of ways to create new power sources that can be utilized in drone technology. And I foresee that within the next couple of years, these solutions will be introduced and will give us longer flight times on these multi-rotors. If we look at a fixed wing airplane or a fixed-wing drone, the scenario is very different because you have, thanks to the wings, you have lift. And so these machines, they fly for hours, while multirotors, the platforms that usually have 4 or more propellers, they need more energy because they don't have that same lift ratio as a fixed-wing airplane. So absolutely, battery power right now is a limiting factor, but I also think it's a great opportunity for an industry to evolve and find new ways, just as we're seeing with electric cars. Over the last 10 years, they've gotten better and better, and the range has dramatically increased. And I foresee very similar developments in the drone industry.
Thank you. 프로에서 뭐 질문하신 분 있으시면은 손 들고 질문해 주시면 좋겠습니다. Then I ask another question. My another question is about the test bed of drone flight. 네. 네. In order to develop drone industry, I think the test bed of drone is very important. Then I hope to know how to manage a test bed in USA and China, and especially do you have a test bed in your company, and then where is located in China? Yeah.
So one thing that we as an industry, the drone industry, in my opinion, is not doing well is the clinical trial approach of testing the technology. And if we compare it on the medical side, every time there is a new medicine coming out or a medical instrument, it has to go through a rigorous clinical trial test scenario. And those can be not only expensive, but take time. But the data that comes back is tremendously of importance because we're talking now about a medicine or a tool that can save lives. The drone industry is going into a similar area. We're now seeing drones being used in firefighting operations, in search and rescue operations, and in also the delivery of medication and medical tools. So in essence, we as an industry need to do a better job in really putting these platforms to a more rigorous trial scenario so that we can learn how to best utilize the technology, how to best do the tactical approach of the technology. For example, search and rescue. If we do a search and rescue operation with a drone on flat grounds, there is one way of doing it. If you do it in a mountainous environment, there's a very different way of using the technology. And we need to better understand the advantages and disadvantages of the different approaches so that when there is a real-life search and rescue operation, that we know how to tactically approach that issue and utilize the technology in ways that it's even more beneficial than just having eyes in the sky, in essence, over an incident scene. And so we're looking for these projects where we can really test and study the use of drones. And some of them happen in the United States, some of them happen in Europe, and more we're seeing, especially academia, setting up these tests all over the world. And that is very exciting because we're gathering a lot of helpful data on the technology and how to best use it. At the end of the day, as I mentioned before, these are data collection devices. It's not just the hardware that flies, but the data that comes from it that needs to be analyzed, that needs to be put in a form that can be shared easily and to the right people. And there's still a lot of challenges with all of that. So testing right now definitely is something very important that needs to happen all around the globe.
Yeah. I agree. You talked about the importance of big data. Big data is also the very important source of developing a drone. And then my another question is about DJI. How many drones does DJI produce in a year? And what is the vision of DJI in the future?
So I can't give you specific numbers, but many drones, because there is really a big interest. And what started out really in the consumer space for the filmmakers, for the artists that wanted to have that drone to create that beautiful different look, has really now morphed into industries, insurances, agriculture, inspection companies, construction companies utilizing this technology. And we will continue to see a big growth year after year. And so at DJI, we want to continue to be at the forefront. Right now, DJI has about 70 to 75% of the market share when it comes to consumer and commercial drones. And that's a huge market share. And we want to continue to be innovative and come up with technology that is not only easier to use, but provides more options, that gives the operator an easy way to utilize the potential of it. And it's very exciting to work with a Chinese company, not only to learn about all the fascinating cultural differences that come along, but to also get inspired by the vision of a different way of thinking and looking at problems and solving problems. So I think it's a very fascinating time for me personally, but also for people who are interested in this technology. And for the very first time, we really have a very different environment with this Chinese company that is now leading an entire consumer sector, and we all can learn a lot from this success story.
Thank you for your good answers. 네, 이쪽 플로우에서 질문 하겠습니다. 네, please.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Both of you. So I'd like to ask a question to Mr. Romeo. Actually, I've seen a lot of useful information about why drones are useful. But drones are, for example, some areas in the world, not just like Korea, where it's very safe. Drones. Some people, some communities are already faced well-known drones, but in a negative way. And you have already mentioned some challenges, as you included some of the challenges that you are telling about that your industry is facing. So what are some strategies that you are using to convince to the communities, those who have already such a negative perception about the use of drones? Are there some strategies that you are already started to use for convincing those such kind of communities? Thank you very much. That is my question.
Thank you for this question. What are the strategies to convince somebody who is not a fan of drone technology and turn this individual into a believer? Well, I think talking about the positive impact of technology is key. And if we can showcase how this technology can really help, and I think public safety and humanitarian projects are the perfect example of showcasing what can be done. And it touches us on a level that can be emotional. When I think back of the last couple of weeks up in Northern California, doing all these mapping missions or using the drone to look for remains of individuals that have vanished in the fire, and then talking to the people that had escaped their communities, and they're learning about this technology and seeing their reaction, how grateful they were that we were using drones, that is very inspiring, and that's exactly what is needed. We need to showcase to the public, to the lawmakers, to the non-believers, to the people that have concerns, what can be done and how can it help you. Because at the end of the day, it's extremely difficult to argue with technology that can save life and property and that can make us be more effective and more efficient. So that's probably the best strategy, and to educate, to go out and show a person what this technology looks like and what it feels like to fly it. I get very much joy out of that whenever I go and fly a drone. Usually people come up and they want to know more, and oftentimes they have questions or concerns, but the moment you give them the controller, the moment you give them the monitor to look at what the drone sees, their views change. And it takes that outreach, especially in the beginning of something so new as this, where we as a community have the opportunity to really reach out. So I think that's the strategy.
Thank you for good questions and good answers. 또 여기 앞에 계신 분 가시죠. 네. 가능하시면 성함하고 뭐 이렇게 그 소속 같은 걸 말씀해 주시면 좋겠어요.
두 분 말씀 정말 잘 들었고요. 저는 대학 영남대학교에서 미대지만은 3D 프린터하고 실제로 드론을 가르치고 있는 대학 교수입니다. 신기훈이라고 하고요. 실제로 두 분의 기술을 적용한 미디어 아트도 만들고 있는 사람입니다. 제가 가장 오늘 뭐 많은 좋은 이야기를 들었는데, 저는 실제로 이제 후배, 저희 미래인 학생들을 가르쳐야 되는 입장에서 두 분들, 그러니까 3D 프린터도 그렇고 드론도 그렇고 지금 어떤 대학 교육에서, 그러니까 아까 보여주신 거는 초등 교육이나 어린아이들, 대중들을 상대로 하는 교육에 대한 비전은 보여주신 것 같은데, 대학 교육, 그러니까 전문 인력이 이제 직접적으로 나올 수 있는 그 직전 단계인 대학 교육에서 어떤 걸 적용해야 되고 어떤 비전을 이야기해야 되고 어떤 이야기를 해줘야 되는지 제가 가장 고민하는 부분이기도 합니다. 예, 그 부분 두 분 다 좀 부탁드립니다.
Would you like to answer shortly?
Yeah.
At rest for you. Yeah.
I'll say a few words. I used to be a university academic before I became semi-retired, and I now run a little consultancy company. When I was an academic, I was running a course which we used to call digital manufacturing, which wasn't just 3D printing, it was also using low-cost CNC machines like laser cutters and so on to manufacture things, and also CNC routers to make PCBs, essentially rather like the facilities that you find in a fab lab. And that was a conventional course when I was there, but before I left I proposed something which would have been fairly radical, and I don't know if this was taken up or not, but my proposal for my engineering students that I left behind was that my colleagues should introduce a course where the students had no exam and no written work to submit in order to get marked. In other words, there was nothing that was written down, either in examination conditions or as coursework. The idea was to have a course where the students were simply given a project and the item they submitted to get marked was a machine. They had to build a machine and they would be given a little label with a piece of string on it, they'd tie it to the machine, and that would be the item that got marked. And as I say, I don't know if they implemented this after I left, but I think that sort of approach might be quite inspiring for students if they, instead of having to sit an exam or write a long and possibly rather dull report, had instead to make a machine, and that was the thing that got marked. So that would be my suggestion.
There is a challenge, especially when you bring in this new technology, but college and university, we see a lot of not only research projects that utilize drones, but what we're really seeing right now is on a college level is the development of applications. So our drones have a software development kit compatibility. So third-party software developers can create an app that runs on the drone that does a specific function, from autonomous flight to photography to mapping. Whatever the case may be, there can be an app. And so we're seeing colleges and college students working on the development of apps. And then we're seeing college students learn about mapping and what to do with the data, how to interpret the data. Because it's one thing to just collect the data, but then what does it mean? What does it mean when you look at a 3D map? And that's the component that also needs to be taught and learned. So how to take action from the data that you just created so that you then have actionable data and can create and gather more data. So we're seeing universities that not only utilize the drone technology on research projects, but that are on the forefront of doing hardware modifications or software add-ons to solve specific problems. So as time goes on, I think we will be seeing more and more curriculums that can be incorporated not only on a younger or lower school level, but also in college and then university levels.